Hello, my name is SYbarra, and I am here to present my TED Talk research PowerPoint slide for globally distributed software development management. It is currently 11/22, November 22nd, the day before Thanksgiving. So let's get this started. My research, I went a little off the wire. Over the past week, I was trying to come up with a good topic, and lo and behold, in my newsfeed, I saw that Microsoft is working on a new feature for Visual Studio that, to me, seems like it could have a very positive impact on managing globally distributed software development. So let's dive right in. So starting off, we've talked over the course and actually experienced firsthand why globally distributed software development is extremely tough. There's a lot of cultural challenges that come up during the development cycle, especially when you're working with remote teams in foreign countries. But on top of all of that, there are a lot of technical issues that come up as well, just basic collaboration problems that we primarily ran into in our class, despite the fact that we were realistically doing local development, as we were all meeting weekly in class and able to look at the code together in real time, which isn't always the case in globally distributed software development. So some of those challenges that we ran into and that we know come up in the real world as well include effective communication between those teammates. Very, very challenging. Dealing with source control, especially when you have newer developers who may not have worked with it and may not be comfortable. They may cause some serious problems with overwriting other people's code, doing rollbacks when they shouldn't be doing rollbacks. Lots of potential headaches there. As far as doing some kind of remote development where you can actually collaborate on someone's code, it's possible to do a screencast while asking a remote colleague for help, but it's pretty cumbersome, and it's kind of hard to explain and describe to a new developer what they should be doing. So let's explore some of the possible solutions to these. These problems, as far as communication goes, we want to use communication tools and platforms that are established, things like Slack, WhatsApp, Google Hangouts, Discord, or if you need to do some of those video chats, Skype. As far as source control goes, we typically use systems like Git or Perforce to check files in or out of depot. As I mentioned before, you have to be careful with this. Once you get the hang of those platforms, it's fairly easy to navigate and use, but for a new developer who may not be familiar with those, it can be a little intimidating, and there's a lot of room for error there. Also, working directly in real time with a remote team member, you can use a live screencast software like Skype. That way, say, if I was the remote developer and I was providing a device for a new developer and I wanted to see what was going on with their code as far as their debugging, they could do a screencast and I could actually see what's on their desktop on my own and kind of guide them through the process. In theory, this sounds great, but in practice, it can be a little challenging trying to explain to someone what they should be doing without being able to provide any input. However, that problem may have been solved with this new feature that Microsoft is working on called Visual Studio Live Share. So let's take a look. So what is Visual Studio Live Share? It's a real-time collaborative tool for editing and debugging codebase in Visual Studio. At the surface level, it's a very generic description. It gets a lot cooler than that. The way I like to look at it is you kind of think of it like Google Docs or Google Slides, those collaborative tools that Google is so well known for, combined with Visual Studio and programming. So it allows developers to view the same codebase and its context in real time without having to do a screen grab. Like I said, it's similar to those Google Docs where one teammate can read, navigate, edit, and actually even debug and step through the code during execution while the other teammates can see these actions and changes in real time. To me, the true strength of this is actually collaborative debugging. So multiple users can debug a problem in the context of the core users or the host users code base. And the best part is they don't have to do any polls or any synchronization of source control. They don't have to download any potential dependencies. This is all in the context of each team member's own IDEs and their own particular settings. And we'll talk a little bit about that here shortly. Each connected team member can control the execution of that code, as I said, while independently inspecting variables, watches, and locals in debug mode. So what this means is, say you have a for loop with several different variables that are declared in the local context of that loop. One user can look at or place several of those variables inside their own watch windows with their own debugging settings as they step through and try to figure out the problems, looking at variable values, while another user may be looking at the external scope of that loop to watch variables that may change in that context. So it's very, very cool that everyone kind of gets to individualize their own experience while they're working through the code together at the same time. So there is a brief demo video here. I'm not actually going to go into this video simply because, one, for time constraints, and two, there is no sound with the screen grab that I'm recording right now, so I will leave that in the slides so you can view that at your own pleasure. But Steve, how is this better than other apps like TeamBuilder that allow remote input while screen sharing? So this would probably be the first thing that a cliche skeptical developer might ask. And if you've not heard, there's an app called TeamViewer that is a screen grabbing or a screencasting application that also allows remote input. So you can basically take control of someone's computer and start doing the development for them. So if I was a mentoring remote developer and I was trying to explain a new system to a novice developer, I could use this TeamViewer application to take control of their screen and walk them through the debugging process and start entering in input. So what are the advantages of Visual Studio Live Share over things like TeamViewer? So the problem with screencasting like that is it forces everyone on the team who's a part of that screencast to see everything on that user's desktop. So that can lead to some security issues, other potentially embarrassing issues if they've got some baby pictures of themselves or something that are floating around. Leads to some problems. On top of that, even if it allows other users to provide input, you're still bottlenecked by requiring all users to interact with a single host machine. So it's basically like the same issues that you might run into with multi-threading, where if you've got multiple people accessing critical information, again, that causes a lot of problems, or has the potential to cause a lot of problems. Live share is great because everyone can navigate the code base on their own machines, and they keep their own IDE customizations. So they don't have to change anything. They don't have to change any settings in order to interact with things. They don't have to fumble around with the user's settings while they're navigating the host machine. Very, very straightforward, very simple. Furthermore, that navigation isn't just limited to reading and editing that code. All the users can use rich language IntelliSense features such as like go to definition or peak definition if they're curious while kind of stepping through the code base. And furthermore, this kind of increases everyone's workflow, as if you're trying to debug a problem or build a system from the ground up, you can use that partitioning pattern in basically real time for everyone to start building the thing from the ground up and sort of divide and conquer. So I compare that to Split Up Gang from Scooby-Doo cartoons back in the day. So here's a screen grab of the current beta of Visual Studio Live Share. So you have one teammate on the left side, Chris, while the second teammate, Amanda, is helping Chris sort of debug his code. So you can see that they're both actually using different IDEs. Chris is using Visual Studio Code to solve a JavaScript issue, while Amanda is using her preferred IDE, Visual Studio, and she's got her own custom screen colors. She's got all of her own settings, text font colors, things like that. And you can actually see that while Chris has highlighted his area of concern inside this for loop, Amanda can see what he's looking at on her machine in real time, and it's got his name right there. It's very, very similar, if you've ever used Google Docs, to how that looks. So, potential implications of this new feature. Team members need to collaborate on a debugging session with the context of a single project. Again, showing and resolving an issue that's only reproducible on one person's machine while not on others. That helps you kind of pinpoint what the potential issue is there. Like I said before, if you're trying to figure out how to design a system, you can divide and conquer and use that partitioning pattern in real time. And of course, mentoring team members or remote developers that are new and unfamiliar with the codebase. And I actually wish I would have had this feature to help one of my more experienced or more inexperienced team members learn how to use the debugger to kind of step through and fix some data structures that we were having problems with during one of our projects. So some more specifics, technical details, security issues, compatibility. LiveShare is currently planned to work with Visual Studio 2017 and Visual Studio Code IDEs. It'll be compatible at first with Node.js and .NET, like C#. More languages are planned in the future. It only requires that the developers have internet access, and it actually doesn't store the code or upload it to any clouds or anything. It still lives on the host machine. All it does is it forms a connection with everyone's compatible IDEs, and they're essentially making changes to the code base on the user's machine, but those updates are being pushed to everyone who's a part of that connection. They access that code base through a secure cloud service that forwards those commands. So again, you're not uploading the code base or anywhere, you're not saving it. It still strictly only lives inside of the code base of the host user. Some final notes here. They're planning a limited and private early release in 2018 in the US only. There is a link right here to sign up for possible invites to the preview, and there's also a frequently asked question page on Microsoft's website that provides more details. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that this is something that really gets everyone excited. I personally am very excited for something like this. This would have done absolute wonders in our Tetris project, as I could have very easily just rallied everyone to establish a connection. And taking that first step in development, especially when you have some intimidated team members, is really the hardest step. And just by getting them involved in the coding process, I think would be a huge step in getting some of them to provide that actual work. So again, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Happy Thanksgiving.